Kiva's had her food in the bowl all morning and she decided now to have her breakfast. Hold on a second. My son is 6 months old and it has taken me this long to be able to sit down and film my labour video. I'm sorry, okay? Yes. So basically, it's taken me far too long to actually get down and film this video, mainly for the reasons that, 1, having a baby is time consuming, 2, my labour story is quite long, and 3, I just haven't really been bothered, to be honest. Anyway, I've got my notes from my labour and thought I would share. So I would classify my birth as a positive birth, although there are some aspects of it I wasn't 100% happy with, which I'll get into. All in all, I was fairly happy with how it was, how my experience went. I did end up having to have an assisted delivery, which was cesarean, and I'm happy with that. That is what I wanted, and so I'm glad I had a cesarean as opposed to other assisted delivery options, basically. But yes, let's get into it because it might be quite a long video. I'm hoping to maybe be able to condense my notes to not be 4 hours long. So yeah, let's just get going from the beginning, okay? From the beginning. My labour technically started on the 3rd of August. All day on the 3rd of August I was having Braxton Hicks, and if you don't know what Braxton Hicks are, it's just basically contractions that aren't real contractions, sort of like your body prepping itself. But obviously at this time I didn't know it was actually labour that had started. It was just sort of pains across my stomach every so often. They weren't, you know, any sort of rhyme or reason to them. It was just throughout. We actually went to the cinema on the 3rd. What day of the week was the 3rd? I think it was a Saturday. Yeah. So we went to the cinema to see Toy Story 4, and I was hoping that sort of like an uplifting film would help bring on labour. I also wanted to sort of like zone out of the fact that my due date was the 3rd, and I wanted to zone out of the fact that I hadn't had the baby yet. I was hoping if I relaxed, maybe labour would start properly, which it didn't, because on the Sunday all my Braxton Hicks had gone, no pain at all, no signs of labour at all, and I panicked because I was sort of thinking, oh dear Lord, what's happening? Why is the baby not coming? Where's the labour gone? And I was worried that basically my labour wasn't going to start properly, and I was worried, and because I'd had the Braxton Hicks on the Saturday, I was sort of expecting things to pick up on the Sunday, and there was nothing, and I was sort of thinking, I'm going to be induced. Bear in mind, you don't really get induced until 2 weeks after your due date, but I was thinking, that's it, my baby isn't coming. I'm going to be stuck being pregnant for another 2 weeks, which I didn't really want, because by that stage I was a bit fed up of being pregnant. Nothing happened on the 4th, and I was worried, and so me and Sean went for a long walk around where we live to try and help move things on. On Monday I woke up and lo and behold, I had contractions. Yippee! So at this point I downloaded the Freya app, which is an app which helps you time your contractions and helps you breathe through them, and I highly recommend it if you are doing hypnobirthing, which I highly recommend you do. It was incredibly useful, and it was really useful to just sort of zone out of when the contractions do kick in. Am I in labour? It's the 5th of August, and I've been having pains every so often, coming and going, and so yeah, I'm currently timing them on my Freya app, which is a positive birth company app, which I highly recommend. And hold on a second. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, I've been bouncing my ball. I'm watching the Ultimate Warrior comedy program thingy, and just seeing how things go. We'll see. Sean's going to try and work from home this morning because it does that sod's law. If he goes into work, I'll need him to come home immediately. So yeah, that's what's going on. 5th of August. Is today going to be the day, or will it be tomorrow? Or will it be a completely different day because the baby goes, nah, don't fancy it, and then it all goes off. Let's see. Let's see. At this point my contractions weren't very intense, so it was perfectly fine just to sit in the living room, watch TV, and just whenever I had a contraction I could just breathe through them. And yeah, it wasn't that bad, to be honest. I was watching the comedy channel throughout the whole beginning part of my labour, because when you are in labour it's good to watch uplifting funny things, because funny things, it increases a hormone that you need to help with labour. I don't know the science behind it, I can't remember. Hypnobirthing taught me all the positive things to do, and so one of the things was to watch something funny and uplifting. So I was watching the comedy channel, which is quite funny actually now, because I think for most of the day I was watching John Richardson's Ultimate Warrior. Yes, and so the theme tune for that show now, whenever I hear it, I remember being in labour, not like the pain and stuff obviously, but I just remember being like, oh yeah, that's like the theme tune to my birth. And then random like things that happened on that Monday were, for example, I phoned my mum to let her know what was going on. My parents kindly looked after Kiva for us whilst I was in labour obviously, and for the first 2 weeks of bringing Ellis home, they looked after the dog just so we didn't have too much to deal with right then, because newborns are intense basically. Also, Sean made like a picnic of food, because again, labour can be a very long process, and although when you're in labour you don't necessarily want to eat anything, it's good to eat where you can, if you're allowed to obviously, and obviously your partners need to eat, so make sure that if you are pregnant that your partners bring food to eat for themselves, because they're going to get hungry and hospitals don't provide food for them. Obviously you can eat from a vending machine, but if you're in labour for like 72 hours, which I wasn't thankfully, but if you were to be in labour for 72 hours, your husbands, partners, wives, mothers, anyone there, they need to eat too, so they're going to get hungry. I was just in the living room watching TV, breathing through contractions. Sean also had to run to Sainsbury's to buy a TENS machine. We thought we had one in the house, but well, we did, but it didn't work, which wasn't very useful. Basically a TENS machine is like it's like sticky pads that you stick to your lower back, and every time you have a contraction you press a button and it sort of vibrates, and it's meant to basically counteract the pain of the contraction. But it didn't work for me, it was hideous. So Sean went all the way to Sainsbury's to buy this stupid machine, brought it back here, I put it on, and I was like, get that thing off me. It was horrible. I just, oh, not good for me. Some people swear by them, I hated it. So that was a big waste of money. So I was pretty much in labour at home from all day essentially, and about 8 p.m. my parents came to take the dog away and we went to hospital. I think I probably could have stayed at home a bit longer, but my concern was that I had had a bit of spotting, and so I was a little bit concerned. They do say if you do have any spotting, just to maybe get checked out to make sure everything's fine and dandy. And because I'd had a bit of spotting, I was like, let me just get to hospital and get this sorted, just to be sure that everything, you know, the baby is happy and whatnot. So we drove to the hospital, and I was went to triage, as you do when you're pregnant and in labour, and they're sat on the bed, and basically when you go into hospital when you're in labour they have to examine you to see how many centimetres dilated you are. Just a bit of a backstory here. I had a midwife appointment at 39 weeks pregnant, and at this appointment the midwife offered me a sweep. It's called a membrane sweep. Basically a membrane sweep is where a midwife will try and what are they trying to do? They're trying to like break away some cells from the cervix lining, obviously with their hands, to try and help get contractions starting and get labour established. And yes, I was offered one of these sweeps and I said no, I don't want one, because basically I'd done some research on them and I didn't really see the benefit for me, and also I just didn't really fancy it. I was like, you know what, you keep your hands to yourself, midwife lady, I don't want to sweep, thank you. So when I went to the hospital to be examined, this was the first time anyone had ever had their hands near me. So basically, I had no idea what to expect. And so when I had this vaginal examination, I was like this, whoa! Because I didn't like it. Some people, I've had people, you know, people who I've spoken to about you know, birth and whatnot. They've said that their vaginal examinations were perfectly fine, didn't have any issues with it, didn't really, like, you know, they were like, well, it's no different to like a smear test, didn't see anything wrong with it. Me, on the other hand, hated it, couldn't bear it, horrible. When the woman was done, she said I was 3 centimetres dilated, which was great, because it means obviously that things had started. In hospitals, when you're in labour, they don't generally admit you in unless you are 4 centimetres dilated. But luckily for me, because the hospital was quite quiet, they said, you know what, your labour has, your pregnancy has been pretty smooth, your labour has no complications. You want a water birth upstairs, the water birth place is completely empty. Go on, head on up. You may as well just stay here until the baby comes now. And I was like, yes, great. So we went upstairs to the water birth area, and because I was only 3 centimetres dilated, I wasn't allowed into a pool until I was 4 centimetres dilated. So basically the setup of the ward was that I was in a sort of spa-like room, is the only way I can really describe it. It was like, you know, this really nice hospital room, had an ensuite, had like nice paintings of like spa pictures on the walls. It was a really big room. Sean had his own like, well, there was a whole space for Sean to be in. There was a ball for me to bounce on, a bed for me obviously, and yes, it was a very nice room.
So some time has passed and we are now in the hospital. So we waited pretty much all day. So Caroline got up at 5 this morning and started having the contractions, and we waited until about 8:30 to actually, in the evening, to actually come in to the hospital. And that's the tricky time, because they can either send you home or keep you in, and they kept us in, which means baby's on the way. Caroline is currently powering through her contractions because she is a superstar. Don't know how they do it. Incredible. Anywho, we'll update you as time goes by. We're here for the evening and the morning, probably.
Basically every 15 minutes a student midwife would come in and check my blood pressure and the heartbeat of the baby, and yeah, and that was it. It was like, you know, you make yourself comfortable, just chill out here, and when you're 4 centimetres dilated, you can then go into the birthing pool area. So it was like, great. So Sean went downstairs to the car, picked up the fan, because obviously it's the height of summer in August, so we got the fan out of the car, and obviously all the food stuff and our suitcases and things that we had packed for our hospital stay. We set up this room to be basically how I wanted it to be. It was amazing. I had the fan going on me. I was lying on the bed, just breathing through contractions just fine. Sean had cracked on eating the picnic stuff. And yeah, we just chilled out. I was watching Friends, and the student midwife kept coming in every 15 minutes to check everything was all good, and everything was fine.
How you feeling?
Fine. Baby's just moving around.
Baby's just moving around. We've got a little setup going. We've got Friends.
I haven't watched it yet.
The episode with the fridge. Haven't watched it yet. And a fan. Not really much else yet. And I blew up a ball. Exciting times. And it's nearly Tuesday.
4 hours later, so this was about, what, I went in about 8, so about midnight, the senior midwife came in and said to me, do you want another examination to see how far along you are dilated? And obviously, even though the examination was horrible for the first time, I was like, well, obviously yes, because I want to know if I'm 4 centimetres, and then I can get into the birth pool and start labour properly, sort of, if you know what I mean. And so, although I didn't want this examination, I said yes to it. And the problem here is where, and this is a thing that part of my labour, which I wish I had been more educated about, I guess, because basically, because of this examination the first time, I knew what to cut. I knew what was coming. I knew I didn't like it, and so basically I tensed up. And when you're being examined, you don't want to be tense, because obviously they're checking to see how relaxed your cervix is, and if you are tense, obviously your cervix isn't going to be relaxed. And so basically this woman did an examination, and what I can tell you now is that it was horrible. I don't know if it was, I think it was a mixture of me and this midwife combined. Didn't work out well, because she was far too aggressive. That's her, she was far too aggressive. But I was so tense that basically she did the examination and said, "Oh, you really hurt my hands there. I don't know why you were sent up here. You're not 3 centimeters, you're barely even 2 centimeters dilated." As you can imagine, that wasn't the news we wanted to hear. We wanted to hear I was 4 centimeters, but no, instead I was told I was 2 centimeters, which I don't think is possible. I don't think your body can reverse its dilation. I think it can stay the same, but your body can't just go, nah, I'm just not going to bother. I'm just going to go back down a few centimeters. Maybe you can, but I'm not sure if it's possible. Anyway, she said that I'd hurt her hand as well, which annoyed me and Sean quite a lot, because quite frankly, I don't care about your stupid hand. You've just been violating me. I was literally arching my back all the way back, in pain when this woman was doing this. The student midwife had to put a hand on my chest to try and hold me down. It was horrible, and I think that she was aggressive. I don't think that's the norm. The first examination I'd had was nowhere near as aggressive as this one, so that wasn't fun. Basically, the end of that bit is the midwife turned around and said, "You can't stay in the hospital, you have to go home." And so obviously we made this, you know, this room made it ours, and, you know, we unpacked everything, we got ourselves set up. We'd planned on having a baby in that room within the next 48 hours, and we were being told to go home. This midwife gave me some pain relief. She told me to stop counting my contractions and just to go to bed and just see what happens. And so packed up all our stuff, you know, and went home. And honestly, I got to the car and I broke down. I was really upset. I just thought, you know, I've been here for 4 hours, I'm exhausted, I've been in labour for this long, I'm in pain, when's this going to end? What's going on? Why am I being sent home? This isn't what, you know, if I'd been sent home from the get-go, being, you know, you're not 4 centimeters, go home, that would be different. But the fact that we had made ourselves, you know, in our minds we were having the baby in the next, you know, few hours, day or so. No, we were sent home and I was devastated. It was not good at all. And obviously the pills she had given me were also were sleeping pills essentially. I think it was like codeine. But it wiped me out. And so by the time we got home, I was literally like, whoa, I am zonked out. So I came home and went straight to bed. So the next day, this is Tuesday the 6th, I woke up and I was in pain. This wasn't contraction pain, I was just in intense pain. My lower back was absolute murder. And contractions are pains that come and go like a wave. And I had just constant lower back pain, and it wasn't going away. It was, you know, horrible. Just, it was a horrible pain. And Googling it, as you do, it pretty much, the result every time was your baby is back to back. And back to back babies are harder to get out of you, because the science behind it is a baby wants to be facing your spine when they come out of you, so head down. Simply because this part of your head, a baby's part of the head, is the softest part, and so that will come down the birth canal as it's meant to. It will sort of, the skull of a baby sort of goes in on itself. I think that's why they have the soft spot. I'm not sure, but I think that's why. The heads will sort of squish down and go through the birth canal easily. When they're back to back, this part of the head is the biggest part of the head and also the hardest part of the head. And so getting a baby out is a lot harder to do because it's not in the right position. Yes, and so I was like super. Babies twist when they come out of the birth canal, so you can turn them around again. So I was bouncing on the ball as much as I could to try and get him in the right position. Sean was giving me massages. I was in pain, and to make matters worse, my contractions had stopped. it was awful. This Tuesday morning, for most of Tuesday, I was in a bad way. I had thought that through doing my hypnobirthing, one thing that is mentioned a lot is that you need to make labour a positive experience yourself, and that's why I was watching like the comedy shows the day before and stuff, because the happy hormones help your labour establish, and negative thoughts and negative feelings will stop your labour, because panic sets in and adrenaline doesn't help you give birth, basically. This midwife basically manhandling me the day before, I think, has stopped my labour, because my body was like, I didn't like that, we're not going to do this anymore. And so I was like, okay, my labour stopped, I'm in excruciating pain, how long am I going to be in this pain for if my labour has stopped but the back pain is present? Is this going to be a forever thing? Am I going to be 2 weeks in pain like this? Because I can't do it. It was horrible. Really bad part of my labour was this Tuesday, for the big chunk of the Tuesday, because I didn't know what to do. I was sort of at a wit's end of thinking, I couldn't see a light, basically. I couldn't see when my baby was going to be coming. So I had a long soak in the bathtub, and then I don't know what happened. I just remember being upstairs and having this overwhelming urge to clean the radiators. And so I was sitting there cleaning the radiators with my Zaflora, my cloth, and I was cleaning it, and I had like this, I was like making this, I can't describe what happened, okay? Just remember sitting there. This is like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so I've been all day in pain, watching TV, trying to find anything to stop this pain happening. But then I just remember cleaning the radiators and like having like I started like making this like weird humming noise, and I know this is where Sean sort of was like, what's going on here then? I was sort of like going, and I think it was my contractions that started again. But because of the lower back pain, I couldn't really feel the difference. Sean phoned the hospital to say what was going on, and the hospital said, it sounds like you should probably come in just to get checked out. The lower back pain's not going away, we should probably examine you to make sure everything's all fine and dandy. Obviously, them saying they're going to examine me filled me with dread. The car ride to the hospital was horrible. I couldn't sit down properly because there's lower back pain, and when I had a contraction it was about 500 times more painful than the day before, mainly because my lower back pain was mixing in with the contraction, and it was unbearable. I was literally at the back of the car like, yeah, horrible. And so I went into the triage room, and Sean explained to the midwife what had happened, and the midwife was like, but we have to examine you. And I was like, I don't want to be examined. And there was a bit of a battle of wills, but the midwife, thankfully, I'm so grateful for this midwife, she said she understood what happened the day before, she understood why I was stressed out, and so she said to me, do you want gas and air when you have an examination? And I said, yes, because gas and air helps with pain. And so I had gas and air, she did the examination, and I felt this, gas and air makes you a bit loopy. When you're inhaling it, you go a bit like, whoa. And so I was inhaling this gas and air, and I felt this sudden rush of like liquid, and I thought, oh my god, I'm bleeding to death. She's obviously done something, and blood is everywhere, and I'm dying, I'm sure of it. I came out of the gas and air fog, and they were like, basically, my waters had just broken. Yes. Which was great news, thankfully. So yeah, so basically the midwife was just about to go home for the shift, from her shift. She went home at 8 o'clock, and it was about 7:58, and she had popped my waters, and so she had to tidy that up. I'm sorry, Mrs. Midwife, for making a mess on your floor. So yes, my waters are gone, and I was 5 centimeters dilated. Yes. And just as a tip, if you are pregnant and you don't like the examinations, ask if you can have gas and air. I don't know why no one offered this to me beforehand, because gas and air helped with everything going forward. I should probably add, when my waters broke, the bad thing about my waters breaking right in front of the midwife was that there was meconium in my waters. Meconium is the baby's first poo, and if the baby poos in the womb, you're automatically classified as a higher risk labour, because the baby may ingest some of that and it can cause them damage. So basically my water birth from that moment onwards was out the window. I was not allowed to have a water birth if meconium was found in my waters, so that was a bit of a pain in the arse. So my beautiful spa-like room, which we'd had the day before, was gone, and I was sent into the delivery ward, which was basically a hospital room, you know, your bog standard hospital room. Nothing wrong with it, it's just not spa-like. There's no ensuite bathroom, there's very limited space for Sean and our stuff. Yeah, so that was a bit of a bummer, but obviously baby's health comes first. One thing that I would just add in here is something that I would never stop being confused about, is the fact that when you have meconium in your waters, midwives, well, in my hospital anyway, but they make it a sort of a priority that you are monitored more often, because they're worried obviously the baby may ingest this poo. Something I will never get my head around is, if they are so worried about this, why don't they just give you an emergency cesarean and get the baby out of you there and then? I don't understand why they continue to make you go through labour if they're that worried about it. This is something that I literally cannot get my head around. What is the point? You know, I went into this delivery ward and I said, well, why, you know, what happens now? Am I allowed to walk around? Because I'm in, you know, because I still had this back pain, obviously. And I said, I can't be strapped down to the bed. And the midwife said, well, for the minute, you're okay to walk around because you have 2 sets of waters and only one of mine had broken. So they didn't know how much poo the baby had done in the womb. So they were like, just because the one set is broken, well, you're fine to walk around when you have contractions now, but if we feel the need, if we're more worried about the meconium, you have to be strapped down to the bed to keep the baby monitored at all times. And again, I just think, I was in pain from the baby being back to back, and I could not sit down. I had to stand up or be leant forward. I couldn't sit down or lie down. Lying down was awful. So I don't understand, if they're that worried about it, why bother with labour at all? Just whip the baby out there and then. What is the point? I just cannot understand. But anyway, obviously I'm in the hospital room. Sean had eaten most of the picnic food the night before, so that was a bit of an annoyance for him. He had some sort of stuff left over, but nothing to the extent we had the night before. I thought I'd be able to eat during my labour. I had a bit of a, you know, cracker, and then I had a contraction at the exact same time. So that cracker was spat straight out my mouth, and I just had to breathe through. I only had gas and air at this point because I didn't feel the need for anything else. We'd written a birth plan together, and so the midwife had looked through it and she came to speak to me about it. One thing she did highlight was the fact I had said in my birth plan that I didn't want to be offered pain relief. It didn't mean I didn't want pain relief, I just didn't want someone to say to me, I think you should have this, this and this and this, because obviously if you're in pain, you're willing to take anything that's offered. I wanted to be the person that says, I want to have the pain relief. I don't want someone giving it to me or suggesting it, because obviously I would have just said yes if someone suggested it to me. So at this point, everything was fine. I was sort of left to my own devices. Midwife came in to check every so often, and everything seemed fine. During the time of me being strapped up to the machine, I had this overwhelming urge to push. Mother's instinct is insane, okay? I had the overwhelming urge to push, and I was pushing, sort of, when I had these contractions. But I knew for a fact I wasn't in established labour. Don't know why, I've never done labour before, but I knew for a fact I wasn't in labour. And then a couple of hours later, a doctor came in to speak to me. Because the baby pooped, again, they were a bit more worried about it. So the doctor came in and she said to me, I want you to be strapped to the machine so we can check the baby's heart rate at all times. So I said, if I need to be strapped to the machine, I need to be able to be slightly mobile. I don't need to be walking around the room, but I need to be able to not be laying back because it hurt too much on my lower back. So they sort of strapped me to the machine, and I was sat on the edge of the bed, but every time I had a contraction, it hurt so much in my lower back, I would sort of like stand up a bit because to relieve the pressure. Obviously, every time I stood up, the straps would come off my bump a bit, so the baby's heart rate wasn't being monitored during my contractions. Well, this caused no end of problems, my gosh. I mean, these are things that drive me mad. Okay, I'm just gonna have to like sort of like a little bit of a rant here. When I stood up when I had the contractions, the baby's heart rate wasn't caught on the monitor, so they were worried about that. But when I could manage to sit down, they could catch the baby's heart rate, and it was fine. So literally the difference was when I stood up and they couldn't catch it, they worried. But it was fine. His heart rate was fine. But obviously, being doctors, they want to make sure, obviously better safe than sorry. They were very, very concerned about the fact they couldn't catch the baby's heart rate all the time. So they then said, the best thing we suggest for you is a fetal monitor, which is basically a little hook that they put onto the baby's head, not through my stomach. It goes, you know, through the exit. They put a little cord, little electrode onto the baby's head, and that would get the baby's heart rate. And it meant that I could also walk around the room freely without being strapped to the machine. I've said to Sean before I didn't want this, but because they're making such a song and dance about the meconium in the waters, I agreed to it. This is a part of my labour I wish I had said no, because really this part of the labour was the worst part of my labour, realistically the worst part of my labour. So I was due to have an examination anyway, so I thought, well, while they're doing the examination, they can just put this this thing on the baby's head, so then they'll just get off my back about being sat still, basically, because I couldn't sit still. It hurt too much to be on my back, to be sat still on my lower back. So I was just like, just put this stupid electrode on the baby's head. It's not going to cause him any damage. It just will mean that the doctors and nurses will leave me alone so I can get on with my labour without being sort of harassed every 10 minutes about that we can't get the baby's heart rate. So when I was due to have this examination, see how many centimetres dilated I was, because I had the gas in there, I wasn't too fussed about having the examination, and they were going to put this electrode on the baby's head. The midwife said, let's have a bet of how many centimetres dilated you are. Because she'd noticed me pushing, she had assumed I would be sort of at the 8 centimetres, 10 centimetres side of things. I said, I don't want to bet on anything, because I just knew I wasn't in the stage of pushing yet. I knew I was pushing, but I knew I wasn't there yet. And I'm so glad, I'm so glad I didn't bet anything, because I would have been wildly disappointed. So I had the gas in there, they did the examination, and they did the, they put the cord on they put the electrode on the baby's head. And I remember coming round from the gas and air and looking at everyone's faces, looking really sort of like, and I knew, and I said to Sean, how many centimetres dilated am I? Bearing in mind I've been in hospital for 4 hours in intense pain, and they said, you're 6 centimetres dilated. I'd gone up 1 centimetre in the space of 4 hours, being in so much pain. Thank God I didn't bet. If I'd bet saying I was 9 centimetres or 10 centimetres, I would have been even more devastated. During this examination as well, they did say to me that the baby's head, they could feel, I think, the side of his head. So he wasn't even back to back. He was literally like in a weird position. He just basically, his head wasn't in the right place, as I already knew that from the back pain I'd had. But they put the electrode on this baby's head. Right, the electrode. They did the electrode, and the doctor left the room, because she had put the electrode on, and the doctor left the room, and she said to me, the electrode isn't working. It's not picking up the baby's heart rate. We're going to have to take it off and put it on again. So gas and air, they did it again. It's not a nice feeling. Did it again. Came around from the gas and air. The electrode's still not working. Have to do it again. So gas and air, and this is where I remember like coming round from the gas and air, I think the 3rd time, but it's still not bloody working. And I turned around, I said to Sean, I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day, where I'm just reliving the same scene over and over and over again, because it just was never ending. I'd come off the gas and air. The gas and air doesn't numb the pain, you still feel it. It just is a good way to sort of like, it takes the edge off it basically. I remember having the gas and air and being like, when is this going to end? When are they going to just stop this stupid electrode? And basically they couldn't get the electrode to work. I remember one time my mum was looking at the monitor trying to be like, you know, this isn't working. My mum was getting annoyed with it. Oh, I didn't say my mum. My mum came and joined us to be a birthing partner. My mum was there trying to help the midwife as best she could. The midwife was trying to do it. The doctor wasn't in the room. Sean was there. And I got to a point after about the 4th attempt of this stupid electrode, and I said, take the electrode off me and take these straps off my stomach. I know that my baby's heart rate is fine. I do not want to be monitored anymore. And I'm so glad I said that, because they obviously have to do what you say, because I didn't want it done. I'm so glad I said that, because then they left me to it. So that's a little tip there. That was from, and I don't think I would have been able to say these things had I not done positive birth, because honestly, the ability to know you can say these things is just good to know, because honestly, I could have killed someone with that stupid electrode. Also, they say it's not painful or it's not uncomfortable, and you'll be able to walk around the room with it. When I had it on for the brief, you know, for the few seconds or minutes between the doctor putting it on and then leaving, and then they realised it didn't work, I could feel it. It felt like a, if you're a girl, you'll understand the feeling. It felt like if you put a tampon in and it's not quite in properly, that's what it felt like. That's not a nice feeling. I don't want to walk around with that feeling. So yes, the electrode is probably the worst part of my labour. In the grand scheme of things, it's not too bad. Didn't like it at the time. I'm still not happy about it, but what can you do? Now, this is where it gets really confusing for me, because with the gas and air and a couple of other drugs I had later on, I can't remember the time frame. So after I had all this poking around and the electrode not working and being told it's only 6 centimetres and the baby not in the right position, I think at this point I'd said I would like to have an injection in the thigh, which helps numb the pain quite a lot. I just needed a rest, to be honest. I was sort of a bit like, oh, this is exhausting. I've had enough of this, really. I want to sort of gather my thoughts more than anything. So the doctor's the one who has to administer the pain relief in the thigh. And I remember the doctor came to speak to me and he said, if you want, instead of the pain relief, we give you a drip instead. The drip can help speed up your contractions and speed up your labour. It's just a water drip. It's nothing, you know, nothing fancy. Just literally just to rehydrate your body and, you know, help you relax more. And I said, well, will that help with the pain relief? And he said, no. The problem with the injection is that if the baby is born whilst the drug is still in your body, your baby can be a little bit dopey when it comes out, because the drug does go into the baby. And I said, but then does the drip, if I don't have the pain relief, I have the drip only, will the drip help with the pain? And he said, no. And I said, well, give me the pain relief, for goodness sake. In the end, I had the injection, and I'm happy I did have the injection, because it helped. I had a rest. And then at the same time, I also had the drip as well, because I thought I may as well have the help of rehydration. And also they say that if you need to have an assisted delivery in the end, they'll have to put a drip in anyway, so they may as well do it there and then. So this part of the story is Sean's favourite part of the story. Luckily I was high on drugs at the time, high on this thigh injection pain. I should really know the name of it. I think it's called like Pitocin. I don't know. I think it's called different things in different hospitals. But I remember having this injection in my thigh, so I was pretty much zonked out. I was still aware, and the contractions, I could still feel them, and they weren't that bad, and the back pain had pretty much gone, so that was great. I remember lying there, and this nurse came in to give me my cannula for the drip. And Sean watched the entire thing unfold. I hate needles, okay? But so far I'd been like, you know, the injection in the thigh, I didn't really pay attention to it. It was fine. This cannula in my hand, because I was so high on drugs, well, I was lucky I was high on drugs for this, because Sean watched this. The midwife, she was teaching a student, may I say. The midwife came to put this is a different midwife, by the way, not the original midwife I had. This midwife came in and she put this cannula in. She put it in my hand here, she put the needle in, and my hand apparently, so Sean saw this whole thing, she didn't put the needle in right and completely botched that going in, completely botched it. And she went, oh, I should do that again. So when she went to put it in here, which is somewhere where I'm like, you don't put a blinking drip in the side of your hand, that's ridiculous. Anyway, she did it again and it didn't work again. And I think it's like more to the point it didn't work, more the fact that I think she literally like, it didn't go into the vein at all. I'm not sure. I'll get Sean to do a video on his experience of my labour, and he can tell you in detail what happened. But I remember, I mean, luckily I was completely out of it, so I couldn't feel this pain, what have you. I do remember her saying though, I only try it twice, and if I can't get it in, I'm not going to try again. So she waited for the doctor to come in, and the doctor went whoop, straight in the hand, no issues whatsoever. I did have a lot of bruising the next day on the hand. She definitely didn't do a very good job of that. So I don't know how long I was on this drug for. I must have slept, I can't really remember. But what I do know is I came round from this, when it started to leave my system, I remember turning to Sean and I said to him, I want a cesarean. What is the point of me continuing with this birth realistically? If they're worried about the meconium that I need to be strapped down, but they know the baby's not in the right position for birth, and I'm only 6 centimetres dilated, it's literally a recipe for disaster. You may as well just give me a cesarean. What is the point of me dragging this out longer? The doctor also said to me at one point, when it's your first time in labour, it can take 2 hours per centimetre to dilate. And I'm just, you know, you think, well, hold on, I'm only 6 centimetres now, so I could be here for another 4 hours, and then I've got to push. I've been in labour since Monday. It's now Wednesday morning. So the doctor came in and we had this conversation with him. Sean, being great, literally said, you know, said what I had said and had obviously said, but she's too exhausted to push. She's tired now. How is she going to get to the pushing stage and then push for God knows how long to get the baby out of her? And the doctor turned around and said, fair enough, you can have a cesarean. And I felt like I had won the lottery. I tell you that. I broke down in tears of joy. I was absolutely thrilled. Can't believe, yeah, I'm so happy. And honestly, I think this is down to hypnobirthing that I got my cesarean, simply because I'd done all the research, I knew how to speak to doctors, to a point. I knew what my rights were as a person, and I knew the science behind birth. This is why I think hypnobirthing and just knowledge of birth is so useful, because had I not pushed for a cesarean, I can guarantee you I would have had to keep on going with my labour for God knows how long, got to the pushing stage, and then be told, oh, he's not coming out properly, you need to have an epidural, you need to have forceps delivery, and then maybe cause more of an issue for the baby being distressed, for me being distressed, and be more of an emergency than my labour was at the time when I had a cesarean. I cannot preach hypnobirthing more. Please do hypnobirthing. Please do any kind of sort of research on birth. It is so useful for you. Please. Yes. Anyway, I digress. So, when you have a cesarean, you have to sign a terms and conditions agreement. I had to sign my life away. That yes, I was going to have a cesarean, and yes, I wanted a cesarean. I wasn't being coerced into it, and I understand the problems that can arise from cesarean. And yeah, I was prepped and I was wheeled in, and it was great.
What are you having, Caroline?
Cesarean.
Because the baby is laying in the wrong position and she hasn't progressed in about 5 hours, and she is pooped. See you on the other side when you're a mum.
So the cesarean process, obviously, I went into this a room, an operating theatre, and I remember sitting on the table and the anaesthetist gave me the spinal block in the back of your spine. I did cry at this point because I was by myself. I said, where's Sean? I need him for this bit. And they said, Sean's not allowed in the room while you have your spinal block, because if he passes out, then they can't deal with him as well as me. And I was like, that seems a bit weird, doesn't it? I mean, why is he going to pass out? He's seen me go through all these other things and he's not passed out yet. Why is he going to pass out now when I have an injection in my spine? Either way, when you do have a spinal block, they say do not move a muscle for obvious reasons. Obviously, it's a needle going into your spine. Randomly, I couldn't feel this. I mean, maybe I could feel it at the time and I've forgotten the pain, but I don't remember it at all. But either way, I think they may spray it with numbing first. I'm not sure. But they said don't move a muscle. Don't move. He says that over and over and over again. And I was just thinking the whole time, if the baby kicks me or I have a contraction now, this could be a disaster. But I think my labour had stopped. I'm literally like baffled. I'm like, I cannot remember having a contraction after having the thigh injection. Maybe my body was just like, nah, don't worry about it anymore. I can't remember it. So anyway, I have the spinal block and it was fine, thankfully. The baby didn't move and the baby didn't have a contraction, so that was all fine. Then Sean came in, like 3 minutes before they start doing the surgery. I think Sean was waiting outside, didn't know he could come in when he could come in. It's all faff, I don't know what happened there. The anaesthetist it was very thorough, and I cannot fault him for this. He literally had like an ice, is it like an ice spray? He was like spraying my body and was like, can you feel this, can you feel this, can you feel this, and can you feel this, making sure the area was completely numb and I couldn't feel anything. So I cannot fault him for that. He was very, very, very good at that. And he sat behind me the whole time. And Sean was in, and then the curtain goes up, and then all of a sudden a baby is emerging. Honestly, I don't know, they're so quick at getting a baby out. It was madness. Because of the drug I had in my thigh, they had to take the baby away quickly to make sure he was fine and not dazed at all, but he came out crying straight away, so there's no issue there. And then he was plonked on my chest and my baby was born. And that was that. It was a very surreal experience. It took longer for them to sort of stitch me up after it than it took for the baby to come out. I was amazed at how quick it took to get a baby out of you through cesarean. It literally was about, like, I would say a 5-minute process to get the baby out. It's the closing you up afterwards which takes the longest part. They put the baby on my chest, and I remember lying here, obviously, like, you're sort of like that, you can't do much. But I was just like, you're gonna have to take him off me, I can't breathe. It's like crushing my lungs. And that was that. I was sealed up and then taken to recovery, where I recovered, and here I am now.
Trooper. This is Ellis. He's asleep. There's a lot of hair.
Had I not done my positive birth training course, I don't think I would have had a cesarean. I think I would have ended up being either an emergency cesarean where it's like, quick, get her out, or it would have been forceps delivery, and I really, really, really didn't want forceps delivery. Nothing wrong with forceps delivery, I just, from personal preference, I didn't want forceps. So that's my birth. If you have stuck around and watched the whole video from beginning to end, well done you. I've struggled talking about it. And yeah, I will see you next time. Goodbye.